This was one of those things where I pulled my hair out forever. That's me. So we're going to put prop drilling in context. My new business card. You can all have one at the end if you'd like. Yes. No, it's purple. The monitor has to be color corrected. I know it's purple because I know the hex code. So what is prop drilling? For those of you in React, you're very familiar with the fact that if you have a component that is multiple levels down, in order to get data to it, you have to pass it through every intermediary level to get there. So you have to go from the parent to the child, or sorry, from the app to the parent to the child. And that's just 3 levels. But sometimes your tree can be even worse. So what are the problems we've run into with prop drilling? Well, it adds complexity. You're tightly coupled. If you change it in one level, you got to remember to change it in all the other levels. It's not very performant because now you're passing, it's kind of like that little fire brigade of firemen with the buckets. It's not scalable because if you change your data, you got to change everything, maintainability and debugging. You could try using Redux. That's got a whole host of problems, and I see some shaking heads and some terror. I updated my skills to JavaScript and web development 5 years ago. I had a whole bunch of trouble learning Redux. I have not really used it since. I figured there has to be an easier way, and I just kind of waited. Other libraries, you have a whole host of other problems. We have context to the rescue. I'm not sure exactly when it came into React, but I know it's there. It's easy to learn, it's easy to use. Prop passing is simple. It creates a global state. And most importantly, it is built into React. It's reusable. You decouple, it has performance, flexibility, and it does allow you to integrate hooks. So to use context, you create the context, you provide the context data in the scope, and then you use it. I'm going to be using, I had a project I was working on with Chai Hack Night. They meet Tuesday nights, 3 nights a month they're on Zoom. 1 night a month they are at the Lyric Opera downtown. Great group of folks to do coding. The project I was working on was called Ghost Buses. There's the repository. And because there are a lot of people working on it, don't blame me for some of the code that you see. Pardon me? Yeah, I've tried my hardest to get them to clean things up, but there have been some weird things. There's the site. Actually, that's several iterations ago. And you can kind of see the component relationships. We've got our router, and then we've got the app, and then we've got several different pages, navigation, socials, header. This is the meat of it, and their footer. So to create the context, you create a file called context.js. It becomes a component just like anything else. This is kind of the boilerplate that you use. You have to export the context variable. You're going to have a provider, and this is basically the format that you'll use. And then you provide the context data in scope. Well, that file you just created, that's there. And in this case, and this is one thing that I am partially cleaning up for them, is they actually do an import of a data file rather than doing a JSON read. And that one of the reasons we couldn't quite do that at the time was because they actually read this file in about 3 or 4 different components. And using context became my solution to doing that because I didn't want to read it in 4 or 5 different places. It created different truths in the application. And the other thing is because they're going to be paying for some of the reads somewhere, the multiple reads from the cloud were going to get to be very expensive. So I wanted to bring this into one place and then pass the data. And then this is all you have to do to create the scope is becomes a component that you put around where you want your data and on the tree to go. And then when you get to a component or a file that you wish to consume the data, you import using this format. You're going to get your components, your use ridership data. You're going to create this, and this is the format that you do have to use. I know there's a data structure. There's something going on underneath the hood. It works. I don't care. It's like driving my car. I put the key in, I turn the ignition, it works. I don't care. When it stops working, then I'll care. Then here's my code. And that's as simple as it is to get the context. You can have multiple variables. You have 2 choices. You can take that and you can pass an array. You can change it whichever way you want, or you can even use multiple contexts. Like I said, you can create an object, and the programmer, because your developer has to remember how they set everything up, but that's typical. Just remember to document it. Or multiple contexts. So you're going to change your context file a little bit, just add more to it. And so here now we've got ridership and we've got results of something that they're doing. There's different files that they were passing at the time. And then instead of having the routes wrapped by just one, you have to have it wrapped by 2. And you have to remember to keep them in the right order. So it's here to here and then here, because otherwise you will get some nasty errors. Things will yell at you. All right. We do have one error I ran into. I thought that I had blown things up. And it looks like it's a really nasty thing, but what happened? Well, what happened was when I originally set this up, I set my scope here. So this is where I had it. And this error occurred over here, and I want to say social or the nav, one of these other parts of the tree. And what really happened is my scope was under this branch of the tree. I'm sorry, I had it here, and it was this part of the tree that I had the error in that worked, but I actually went over here to the interactive map and I got the error. Well, basically I had gone out of scope of my context. And so I had to rechange that from where I had it there, just around the routes, to farther up in the tree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it becomes real easy because it was just moving 4 lines of code to a different spot in the React tree. And that just made the scope go larger to make it where I could have it. Now, you do want to keep it as low in the tree as possible just because it does have a performance hit, but you don't want to hit it, the whole thing. I mean, because that's the temptation, just to put it up at the top and then make it available everywhere. This is just only for read-only data. If you're going to write it, there's the use state hook that is there. It's comparable to this, but the context hook is the basis. And I think once you learn that and you can use that, then the use state hook becomes the next logical step and you can understand that. Any questions? Right now, I haven't run into any problems with it, but to me, it's one more tool in the toolbox. If I'm only passing a prompt 2 levels, am I going to use this? Maybe not. If I've got to go, multiple levels and all over the place, probably. Um,
You could always add to the
right. Yeah, or you throw it in context, move the level of where the context is. So there's a lot of flexibility with it. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind them any of the children having access to it. It's my wallet that I worry about for my kids. Yes, sir. Not personally. I don't think this, the Tri-Hack Night application, I don't know is big enough to really stress anything. So, and I haven't really seen, any data on it or worked with it.
there and they're like, but don't use it for like React router use it and stuff. But then when they said officially, like, here is context now, they added in this much more refined state. But what I was gonna say is, I imagine that as you approach performance issues, and you've probably done React more recently, uh, single context data store gets too big, there's benefits and like pros and cons to having many multiple contexts or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that there's something there to you could work with as you approach performance issues.
Mhm.
Don't require you switching to fucking Redux, which is where I'm.
Yeah, and that's the other question that I personally have not answered or played with is if you're using context and you do go beyond its abilities, how hard is it to switch into another content manager?
Open Angular back in the day, right? Like, stop sticking stuff in the global state. What's the matter with you? And then React's like, yeah, I have some global state. Just put it in there.
It's like if you're consenting adults, right? You can do.
You're gonna get there eventually. It's going to happen. It has to be made available. It's like, I hope you guys, I hope everyone, I hope everyone uses it responsibly. But if you don't, have no memory. It's huge. Put CPU, yes.
Yes.
What are the, you had a slide on other libraries. Do you know, like, the libraries you look at that?
I remember Redux was one. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were that I looked through, and I don't remember them offhand. That's homework for the student. Alrighty, and that concludes. You're welcome.